For our first story, we have my Sil female 31 disinvited my wife female 28 from her baby shower after a joke, but my brother male 35 still wants me male 30 to go. I am stuck in the middle. I male 30 recently married the love of my life female 28, and I'm super close with my brother male 35. We always imagined our families being close too until one single lunch ruined everything. So, my wife and I went out to eat with my brother and my Sil female 31, who is pregnant and about to give birth to my first nephew. Needless to say, we are all very excited. Mid-meal, my brother, probably feeling sentimental, goes, "Man, I hope the baby turns out like me. He was such a cute kid." Now, a bit about my Sil. She's usually nice and I like her, but she's definitely type A and a bit high maintenance. Without missing a beat, she shuts my brother down. "No, I'd much rather he turns out like you." A bit of an awkward comment, and my brother probably thought so as well, so he goes, "No, seriously, we'd be lucky if the kid was like me. He was such a nice and cute kid." And then, Sil doubles down. "No, but you're so much more handsome," before turning to look directly at me and adding, "No offense." Now, look. I wasn't deeply offended, my brother is a very good-looking guy, so I get it. But who just says that out loud? My wife, who had been quiet up to this point, clearly found it rude. So she jokingly goes, "Well, as long as the baby doesn't look like Sil, we should be fine." I chuckled. My brother laughed. Sil did not laugh. She immediately got pissed, glared at my wife, and went, "What the hell does that mean? That's extremely rude. We're not close enough for jokes like that." My wife was taken aback and so was I. My brother tried to say something, but she stormed out. My brother followed her, looking about as confused as I felt. Fast forward to today. Sil has officially disinvited my wife from the baby shower celebration. My wife says she doesn't even want to go, which, fair enough. My brother is devastated and really wants me to be there. Now, here's the thing, my brother adores me. He's always been my biggest supporter, and he wants me to be a big part of my nephew's life. He's having his first child, and this moment is really important to him. I love my brother too and can't see him sad like that. He says both my wife and Sil need to apologize eventually, but we shouldn't force it right now and give them some time to cool off. He also thinks Sil owes me an apology for what she said, but again, pregnancy hormones or whatever, so he doesn't want to push it yet. My parents actually side with my wife and think Sil was out of line first. But they also believe I shouldn't miss such a huge moment in my brother's life, and that we should cut Sil some slack because of her pregnancy. Here's my issue. I don't feel right going if my wife isn't welcome. I want to support her, but I also know this moment means the world to my brother. If I go, my wife might feel abandoned. If I don't, my brother will be heartbroken. I feel completely stuck. That's the end of our first post. Let's see what the commenters had to say. Our first commenter says, "You stay home with your wife. Send a gift. Your brother has to deal with his wife." Our second commenter says, "Pregnancy hormones are a real thing. Definitely don't force anything until the sister-in-law is ready. You should definitely sit this one out with your wife. Your wife is your nuclear family now, and as much as you love your brother, him and his wife come second in your list of priorities now." Our third commenter says, "What does your wife think? Does she want you to go? Me personally, I would ask my husband to go because I wouldn't want to rob him of that opportunity with his own brother, especially if I didn't even care to attend said baby shower to begin with. It wouldn't hurt me in the slightest. I'd be home drinking wine waiting for the gossip when he is back, but that's me, and she is her, so I think you should ask her honestly what she thinks and feels about you going and honor whatever she says because, well, that's your person now." For our second story, we have wife, female 28. And I, male 27, ran into her ex at the mall and it sent me for a link all. Never done anything like this before. New account because I don't know where this is going, if it's even going anywhere. My wife and friends know my Reddit username. Maybe I'm overthinking, maybe not. But something about this past weekend is just sitting weird with me and I don't know if I should trust my gut or if I'm just getting in my own head. So for some context, my wife Carla and I have been together for 4 years, married for 5 months. We have a solid relationship, no real trust issues or anything like that. She's an amazing person and I love her endlessly. Something about her that's important to this situation is she's always been one of those people who holds grudges forever. Like she's still mad about a girl stealing her seat in ninth grade. If you cross her, she holds it against you forever. I think that's what makes this whole thing feel off. We were out shopping on Saturday at a mall about an hour from home. At this point the day was winding down and we were grabbing a bite to eat in the food court. And that's when we ran into Chris. Now, Chris is the ex she was with from 16 to 24. He's the only ex she ever really talks about, and every time she has it's been something negative. They fought a lot, they had a messy breakup, they were toxic, they cheated on each other, the whole 9 yards. We've lived in the same city as him our whole relationship, and other than a brief blip while dating, we've never once bumped into him. But we run into him an hour away from home on a random day at the mall. And her reaction just sent me for a loop. I was mid-sentence when I saw her eyes just lock onto something behind me and immediately she lights up. Big smile. Before I even turn to see who it is, she's already standing up to greet him, just beaming. They hug, and not just some quick, oh hey, hug. Like it felt like it was a, so amazing to finally see you again hug. And then suddenly, I'm just standing there, completely shut out of the conversation while they start catching up. I didn't even know who he was. I haven't seen him in years and I had to piece it together as they chatted. I thought she'd introduce me, but nope. I'm just standing there while she's laughing, fully engaged with him. Even some physical touching. T1 point, she shoved his arm playfully. I'm not a jealous person and I honestly have zero problem with her being friends with whomever she chooses. But my impression of her relationship with him was different than what I was seeing. I figured I was overreacting or reading too much into it, but I still felt a bit weird. Like a third wheel if I'm being honest, so I just tried to hint that it was time to go by picking up our trays and making it clear I was ready. Neither of them noticed. So I walked off, tossed the trays, came back. Still talking. They finally wrap it up after a few more minutes and they hugged again and then he was off. And then without a single word about it she just looks at me and goes, okay, let's stop at Lululemon and Indigo before we head out. Like nothing happened. I kept waiting for her to bring him up. Say something about how weird it was, or at least acknowledge him or their conversation in some way, but she just acted like it was nothing. We shopped for another 45 minutes like nothing happened. Once we got in the car I waited to see if she'd bring it up. She didn't. Small talk died off a few minutes after we got on the highway, and she was just glued to her phone. So I asked who she's texting. She says the group chat, that's her 3 best friends Cheyenne, Darcy, and Julia. I said, what's the topic of conversation? She smiled and said, I'm telling them how crazy it is that I ran into Chris. I just say, yeah, that was pretty wild. She agrees and says, insane. What are the chances? And then she just kept texting. I kind of expected that to kick off our conversation about it, but it didn't. That night at home, after she'd been on her phone the majority of the night with the girls still chatting about it, I decided to bring it up. Told her I felt like a bit of a third wheel when Chris showed up since she didn't introduce me. Felt like I wasn't even there because she didn't introduce me. She light-heartedly said, oh, he knows who you are. Then gave me a quick peck on the cheek. Now I didn't exactly handle this great. I brought it up in a very light-hearted and non-serious tone. That's just how I deal with conflict, so it's 100% on me for not communicating where my head was at and I can't fault her for being so nonchalant about it. I left it there for the night and thought I'd take another stab at it the next day once I'd had some time to process. But it's been days and I still just feel really confused about this whole thing. I'm really struggling trying to process how I'm feeling about it all and judging if I even have a right to feel upset. Never run into an ex before, so this is new territory. So I'm making my first Reddit post. Honestly not even sure if this is the best sub for this. If you think this belongs elsewhere, let me know. TL. Dr. Wife and I ran into her ex-boyfriend at the mall. She was very friendly with him and the whole interaction just felt weird. My wife doesn't seem to think it's anything worth talking about. I'm over-processing to the nth degree. Need advice. That's the end of our second post. Let's see what the commenters had to say. Our first commenter says, listen, you really need to start communicating your feelings to your wife. I get that's hard for you, but then that's something that you need to work super hard on improving. Without good communication, relationships won't last. You won't vocalize your feelings and the resentment will just build. Tell her that this mall trip left you confused. You thought she didn't like the guy. She only spoke of him in negative light, and then it looks like she met a long-lost best friend and then spent a whole evening talking about it to her mates. Tell her that was confusing and makes it look like such a big deal. Why was it such a big deal? Does she still have some sort of feeling for him? Also, doesn't she think that's kinda rude to not introduce you and bring you into a conversation? That's universally rude, whomever you are meeting. Ask her all this. Our second commenter says, if someone comes up to you while you're with someone else and you don't introduce them, that's bad social form, period. Doesn't matter if it's your soccer coach and your mom, unless it's a super brief interaction, like a passing hello. That's just a rude way to behave. That rule goes double if it's an ex. It goes from rude to disrespectful. Your wife should have immediately introduced you and included you in the conversation. If she's touching someone, it should have been you. When she didn't introduce you, the subtext is that you aren't worth being introduced to. Even if it had been someone you had met before, the polite thing to do is say, oh hey, do you remember OP, my husband? Or, have you met before? This is like really basic social etiquette that every adult should know. Our third commenter says, have an honest conversation with her about your feelings. Let it all out, you're married. It's one of those hard conversations you have to get through together. For our last story, we have, my 38 female boyfriend 37 male made a video of us having sex without my link night. I, 38 female, found a video on my boyfriend's, 37 male, computer of us having sex. I haven't made one with him and immediately thought it was someone else. I confronted him immediately and he told me it was me and my heart sank. I watched the video and realized that was the night I woke up and didn't know how my clothes came off. The video shows how they came off. I went to sleep early because I was drunk and woke up to him trying to put his dick in me. He told me I helped him get my clothes off when I asked him about it in the morning. I was drunk, so I believed him. I would have consented to the sex, while asleep. I think that's hot, and the video if he had asked, but it really bothers me that he didn't. I think waking up to someone doing sexual acts should be discussed before you fall asleep, not every time but at least once to establish consent. I could really use some advice on how to handle this situation. I've had past trauma with rape involving video without consent followed by blackmail. Is this as big of a deal as I'm thinking it is? How can I move past this? I feel like I'm still in shock. That's the end of our last post. Let's see what the commenters had to say. Our first commenter says, you shouldn't move past it. He raped you and filmed it and then lied about how it all happened. Edit. Just learned from OP's replies that this man was completely sober, and OP was the only one who was drunk and passed out. Our second commenter says, your boyfriend is a rapist, he filmed it and uploaded it to his computer, so there's a good chance that he shared it somewhere. Not only is it a big deal, it's an actual crime. Please leave. Our third commenter says, he sounds like he doesn't care about you, evidenced by him actively lying to you. Him being drunk as well is not an excuse. Run. You deserve better. With someone who respects common decency, you shouldn't have to set a separate boundary with something as obvious as filming without consent. Leave him. That's all for today. If you enjoyed, please leave a like and subscribe. Thank you, and have a wonderful day.